Never say never, as the great Justin Bieber once said.
Oh, wow. Whoa!
What's up, everybody? Sixla here. Before I get on with the podcast interview with Render, I just want to let you guys know to please stop by Indivisible, Indiegogo, and please support any way you can. Trust me, these guys definitely, they really need the help to make this game possible. And without further ado, here's the interview. That's your cue.
Wait, my cue? You're the host.
No. What did I say, Sharpie? You're the host.
Oh my god. Okay, timeout. First of all, this is the Render interview. Thank you so much for coming into the podcast, Render. I appreciate it.
No problem.
And of course, there's Sixlet here.
Hello.
And I'm the Purple Sharpie, who is apparently the brand new host of this entire podcast.
Heyo.
Known as the Skullgirls Podcast. We got Render here, and Render's agreed to ask us a couple of questions. In case you guys didn't know, Render is actually, I believe, one of the lead game developers of Skullgirls and Indivisible. Is that correct, Render?
I wouldn't call myself a lead, but sure, yes, I'm
sure. Why not?
Working on the game.
What would you call yourself, Render?
Designer.
A designer. Okay, that's fair. Designer for Skullgirls and Indivisible. I apologize. We usually like to start it off just by saying, tell us a little bit about yourself, Render, stuff like that, and then we're gonna ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
So tell us.
All right. Let's see. I am Render. My real name is Earl. I frequently go by Earl Friend. I am a longtime close friend of Mike Zaymont, and he and I met through playing Guilty Gear together, and from there, as he and I got closer, I just started talking to him about game design and fighting games, and he and I have known each other for a really long time, like 10 plus years or something.
Wow.
But I guess my career has been. Actually didn't start in games. I started in translation. My formal training is in Japanese language.
Wow. So
yeah.
You're pretty fluent in Japanese. How long would you say you studied it?
Man, I would say that about 10 years or so.
Jesus.
But I hesitate to say that because it's not like I studied like really, really hard for 10 years straight. If I had studied harder, more consistently, I probably could have reached the same level faster. But that 10 years includes like starting in high school and learning it in college, and then graduating and going into translation. And I was a tour guide traveling to Japan for a little while.
Hey, it's a good thing that I'm recording.
You were a tour guide in Japan?
Yeah, well, I was organizing tours over here in the U.S., and I would gather people up, and I would take them over to Japan.
That's so cool. Okay, guys. So Render, the guy behind the game, apparently Japanese extraordinaire. Oh my God, didn't even know.
Well, konnichiwa.
Okay. Right?
Konnichiwa. Hi.
So you expanded on it a little bit earlier. You did say that you've known Mike for about 10 years now. People know the backstory between Mike and Alex specifically, and yours with Mike is Guilty Gear, obviously. How long did you play Guilty Gear?
Oh man, I was serious. Guilty Gear was my first serious fighting game. Like I imported a Japanese PS2 so that I could always get the latest Guilty Gear as soon as it hit consoles. I started with Guilty Gear X, but it was kind of on the tail end of that one. So my big first one, when I really started to like care about like getting good at the game, was just Guilty Gear XX for PS2.
Guilty Gear.
And
who'd you play?
Johnny.
Interesting.
Johnny was my main. He was my main squeeze, and then I dabbled in like Kai and Jam and Saul, but it was always and always ever going to be Johnny.
Amazing. That explains a lot about some of the tweets I see between you and Elkie then.
Oh, with like clothes.
Yeah. It explains so much. It's like, did you have a question? We can just alternate if you'd like.
No, keep going. So far, he pretty much already answered the guilty gear question I was going to answer. So
Okay.
keep it going.
Let's get into a little bit more of Lab Zero specific questions. So you've known Mike for 10 years and you worked in translations and then slowly game design, but how did you actually end up in the Lab Zero team?
So when Skullgirls was originally being developed, I was actually working at Square Enix as an internal translator. I was a QA translator.
You worked at Square. You worked at Square Enix.
Yes, well, specifically Square Enix USA.
I'm sorry, that's so cool. Okay, please continue. I'm so sorry. I want to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So I was doing the tour guide thing, but I'd always wanted to get into the games industry. But my formal training was in Japanese, and there was a job opening over at Square Enix as a translator. I was fortunate enough to land that job, and I worked at Square Enix USA out in LA for about 3.5 years. And during that time was right around when Skullgirls was initially being made. And I was, since I was close friends with Mike, I was naturally, following along with the development of it. And for a long time, he was like, "Man, you should quit Square Enix and come work for us. You should come work on Skullgirls. I would love it if you could work. I want to work with you. Let's please come over." And it was always a little tricky because it's not always advisable to just drop
everything and go work for
a
company that hasn't been built yet.
Exactly, for some unknown, less established company. And at the time it was Reverge Labs, and they hadn't published anything yet, and things were really stable at Square Enix. And eventually Skullgirls came out, and the reception was really good, and Mike was like, "Man, just do it. Come on, just work with us." So I took the leap, and he was like, "Look, dude, I'll teach you scripting and like all the stuff that you need to know to be able to work on Skullgirls." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds awesome."
Wow.
And then I quit my job, and then shortly after, Reverge Labs, the team gets laid off, and I'm like, "Oh God, what do I do?" Yeah. But right around then, I started talking with Peter, our CEO at Lab Zero Games, who hadn't known me at the time, but Mike was vouching for me and was like, "Look, we want to get this guy on the team." So right around then, we were kind of formulating the idea of doing the Skullgirls Indiegogo.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, after talking to the team and being introduced to the people that I didn't already know, like John and Mariel and Alex and them, who I'd met briefly but never really interacted with all that much.
Right.
They said, "All right, well, if we get funded, you can be on the team." And February 2013, is that when it was? Or 2012? I don't remember.
I think it was 2012.
Mm-hmm. And then it happened. We got funded, and it was spectacular. And I've been with the whole team since.
Amazing. That's a pretty rewarding backstory.
Yeah,
that's a really good protagonist story.
It's been good. I will admit I've been very, very fortunate to have the opportunity that I have, and I'm really, really happy to not only work on a team with so many talented people, but thankful that my formal training with Japanese has come in handy pretty frequently. Whenever there are, as I'm sure, the games coming out in
Japan Arcade, yes.
Japan Arcade, that happened just a couple weeks ago, and then the Japanese version of Second Encore's coming out.
Have you been working on the translations for those?
I have not, actually. So here's the thing with translation.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just straight dry information that you're translating,
mm-hmm.
It's not that bad to be translating out of your native language, for instance, English to Japanese. But if you're translating something that's more story or like kind of flowery or has a lot of nuance and flavor to it, like a novel or something like that,
Right.
like fiction, you have to be really, really good at your target language
In order to get like the little undertones into it, right?
right, and it to be able to match the tone and yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And that's incredibly difficult if the target language isn't your native language.
Right. Okay.
So
I see what you're
my native language is English, of course,
Mhm.
and when I'm translating something from Japanese to English, I can do a great job of nailing the nuance and making sure that the little bits come out, and I can write decently well in English.
But vice
I'm
versa
less-
is a whole different story, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, they have a specific term for that kind of translation. It's called localization.
Localization. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I've heard that term before.
Yeah, and what that is generally is, the reason it's called localization is just because it's you're making the dialogue and content accessible to the local region that you're targeting.
Okay. I see.
So like if there's like a joke or something that just doesn't have an analogy, like
Lead a horse to water but can't make it drink.
exactly that kind of thing.
Right.
You want to find an equivalent, because if they don't have that particular idiom in the target language, then you need to have something that's equivalent.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. It sounds like there've been a lot of ups and downs working on Skullgirls so far. Like you, not really with first of all the whole Konami lawsuit. Second of all, obviously the Indiegogo succeeding and so on. What's been the most rewarding or the most valuable experience part of working with Lab Zero for you?
Oh man, I would say the fans.
Aww.
Oh, stop it.
And I mean that 100%. Like there are a couple of close seconds, like working with such an awesome team, and being able to have the opportunity to work on a fighting game, which was my dream. But like all of that is trumped by people being excited about the game. Like because what that does is like if there are a handful of people that have enjoyed the game, I don't care if those handful of people are the only sales. Like it's we worked hard to make a thing that we think people will enjoy, and to see people I mean, I know that sounds cheesy, but like to see people like actually enjoy the thing that we hoped they would is really rewarding. And like I wish that turned into a gajillion $billion.
I knew you were going there.
Money.
I wish I could get money off of people loving my game.
Or just because of your pretty smile, really.
But that's not to say that the game has done poorly. It's sold really great on Steam, and decently well on console as well. So I that's not to say I'm dissatisfied with how it's performed. But there have been some difficulties with that translating to us.
I 100% understand.
Yeah.
Of those difficulties, what would you say would be the most challenging or difficult part of working with Lab Zero? Not just Skullgirls, but let's say also when you guys started out, and right now currently on Indivisible. Can you not play music while I'm doing podcast stuff? Now I have to ask the question over again. Thank you. I'm here with Zidian. He's playing music in the background because he's really excited about this. I'm sorry. I'm going to ask the question one more time. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that.
Sid,
John.
come on, man.
Render said, come on, man. Yeah. Yeah, you sit there and be quiet. Okay. So what's been the most challenging or difficult part so far working with Lab Zero?
Definitely the ever-present God, what's an eloquent way to put this? The
Ever present, we may disband. See type of
yeah, I mean, kind of that. Like
small
it leads
business
to.
woes. Would that be a better way of putting it?
Say that again.
Small business woes.
No, more like just the lack of security. Like it never feels
right.
It never feels like our future is set. Like there's never with the Skullgirls DLC characters.
Mm-hmm.
It was always like, okay, just go to the next thing. And we had all sorts of like great opportunities and we're of course very ambitious with what we want to add to the game. So, we take on maybe a little bit too much here and there, or there's no actual deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Because we would get paid upfront per character. We'd be like, all right, here's your check, here's the money for you to work on this next character, go. And then however long it takes, like we don't get paid again for that character. So we just, like, if it takes an extra month, we have to be like, I guess we'll have to budget that money that we budgeted 3 months ago for an extra month. Now we got to stretch it a little thinner. It's just a very weird dynamic, or a very uncomfortable way to work.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, just because it's so.
There's not a consistent flow coming in.
Yeah.
So it's very hard when you're like, okay, I have to work on something, and then suddenly any extra money I take to work on this thing will not be allocated towards something else, which means something less inside of the game, which means poorer reviews and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, and the pressure's still there regardless. If there's no deadline, there's still pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to move on to a couple of indivisible questions.
Sure.
This is a pretty good, I feel like, transitionary question. Lab Zero has been really active and open with the community. Like you said previously, you guys have done Indiegogo fundings, and you guys have been really good about getting the rewards back and being relatively transparent with the community, more so than other game developers have. You specifically consistently go on Skullgirls and Twitter and speak and talk to fans and other community members and Skullgirls. But there have been times where you guys have gotten really negative feedback, as well as really positive feedback. And I'm sure that both you and other people on Lab Zero, specifically Mike, have seen it and have responded to it. But do you think you'll be just as open for Indivisible, despite what happened during Skullgirls? Like an example would be like the whole panty shot removal. You guys spoke about how that was being removed inside of the game all the way back in April, and people are still really upset, but you're still being the good guy and explaining it and everything, even as going as far as in the AMA to answer all the questions that I consider to be trolling. But you still answered them. Are you guys going to be just as open and indivisible, or do you think you guys are going to try to like be more selective of the questions that you answer instead of answering everything?
Mm-hmm. I think we're going to strive to be as transparent as we have been with Skullgirls.
Okay.
I think that's part of what people have come to expect of Lab Zero, and I think that's one of our better qualities, and I suppose more attractive qualities as a game developer, because people are so used to development companies just being silent or not really interacting at all. And I think that being able to be so accessible to players makes it a better experience for everybody. Even if and I think this does happen sometimes, is for instance for Skullgirls during development, like people are so close with us and along for the ride that even if they've been anticipating the eventual release of what we have been working on, it kind of the impact, like, oh, it's finally out, oh my god, it doesn't feel quite as fresh. Like it's like, let's say you buy a bag of chips and you're driving home. Like if you're driving on the way home and you've already opened it and you're like, while you're driving, you're kind of munching You have a couple. It's not the same as coming home with this glorious bag of chips and opening it up right in front of you and getting that like, yes, sweet. Now I'm gonna dig in.
Right, exactly.
You know,
but personally, I feel even when you guys were, I actually joined the game right before Eliza came out, and I was watching the developing for all of that, and I was watching the open animation streams and everybody talking about here's what it's gonna be like in beta and so on and so forth, and I was still just as happy on day one when it came out. There's actually a video of me like crying and freaking out when Eliza finally came out. But
I may have seen it.
Oh man.
Yeah, embarrassed.
But I think you're right. That is one of the main huge qualities of Lab Zero's that almost no other game developers really do. Like, you guys do open development, and that's your thing. And that's why people continue to come back to Lab Zero for Indivisible. And I don't know, if you guys did another game, people still probably come back for that just because they'd be excited to see the process of it being made, you know?
I'm excited for the opportunity to work on a new thing, and bring that same accessibility, because I think for a lot of players, there's just an automatic barrier to fighting games, because most people have some experience of sitting down with a fighting game, because everybody loves the idea of a fighting game. Like, oh, sweet, I'm gonna pick some cool character and beat up some other cool character, and so everybody has at some point approached fighting games, and even if they never, some people sit down with it and play it, and they catch the bug, and then they're like, oh my god, I'm gonna keep playing fighting games. I love fighting games, or they mash and then they're like, I don't really, whatever. I don't really care. I'm not going to play fighting games. I'm terrible at them. Other people are way too good at them. I'm going to move on. Doing a different type of game where there isn't that just automatic barrier of people looking at it and be like, oh, I'm not good at fighting games. I'll never be good at fighting games. Doing that and having the same accessibility is going to be interesting, because there's just going to be a lot more people able to approach it.
That was one of the questions I wanted to ask that wasn't on the list, and I'm really glad you answered that, because that's a really good question that a lot of people have been wondering. Like, why is Lab Zero moving on to this game instead of another fighting game? That's a really good way of putting it. I can answer that in a couple. I can expand on that a little bit. Sure.
From a personal standpoint and from a development standpoint.
Sure.
One, personally, it is really incredibly difficult to make a new fighting game and weather all of the judgment and the judgment and what is the word? There's a word that starts with S that I'm trying to think of that I can't remember. Skepticism. It's not quite skepticism.
I know what you're trying
scrutiny.
to say. Yeah.
Scrutiny. The intense scrutiny that fighting game fans and players cast at your game. It's so difficult because there's like, you're always being compared to the flagship games like Street Fighter or Marvel vs. Capcom or Guilty Gear if it's more on the anime side. Like it and in a lot of people's minds, those games are untouchable no matter what kind of mistakes they make. Like or advancements in fighting game design that people should be doing now, like button check on character select or being able to deselect your character or having a retry option or just stupid stuff. Like, even if you try to do those kinds of things right, you'll never
get
hold
past.
the candle to those.
Oh, well, it's not Street Fighter. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I mean, Street Fighter has an automatic buy-in because everybody loves Street Fighter.
It's just been around so long. Like, people grew up with it, and you're competing against people like that. Right. Yeah.
So bringing a new IP into the fighting game genre is incredibly difficult, and I personally don't know that if we didn't come at it with like a wildly different style, like artistic style from Skullgirls, that we would be able to make it through. I think the team would love to work on another property like Darkstalkers or King of Fighters or whatever. I don't know that we'd ever be given that opportunity, and I'm sure that there are some diehards that just automatically hate Skullgirls that assume we would try to turn it into Skullgirls, which is silly. But from a company standpoint, part of why this has been answered elsewhere, so I'll only reiterate it briefly.
No worries.
But not all of the team can really play Skullgirls.
Okay.
Like I said before, everybody loves fighting games. Everybody loves the idea of fighting games, but they're not always accessible for everyone to play. So really,
fighting
and Mike,
games has a very high skill cap after you reach a certain point.
It does.
And I think that's what you're trying to say with the team, is that not everybody is as deep inside of fighting games as they would need to be in order to 100% design it. Does that
well more and be compelled to play it. Like,
okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Like, so for a little while, people on the team were coming to Salty, and that was fun, but it was more of like a hangout thing because they weren't really
playing it.
Like
right.
even though it was a cool game and they were proud of it and liked it, like they weren't like, oh man, I really want to sit down and play in these tournaments or whatever, because they just didn't appreciate. Not to say they didn't appreciate it at all, but they didn't appreciate it in the same way that like me and Mike appreciate fighting games.
Right.
So having the team move on to a different genre that is accessible to the whole team is better because people will be more compelled to make a game that they want to play.
Right.
So I think that's important, and also from the standpoint of as a company wanting to show people that we can make other styles of games,
versatility.
Like, exactly. And for the art style too, we still get lots of people saying like, oh wow, it just looks like Skullgirls. But we are making a concerted effort to have the art style not look exactly like Skullgirls.
It actively looks very different. As someone who played both the prototype and Skullgirls, I have no clue where they're getting that from.
I agree. And I think to some extent we are probably desensitized to the Skullgirls aesthetic a little bit. Like for me, it's really hard to tell.
The similarities.
It looks totally different to me because I stared at Skullgirls like hundreds of hours. So like seeing the differences are really, really stark to me.
Right.
But maybe to somebody who
isn't as familiar with the art style.
Yeah. Wouldn't quite see the differences.
Okay. I guess compared to other, I want to say other fantasy style, like role-playing game story mode type things, it would look a little bit more different, I guess, from that aspect, but I really don't see the similarities art style-wise between Skullgirls and Indivisible, but that could just be me. Sixlet, do you have anything to add about that?
Well, the only thing I would see is, it's Alex. That's like the only comparison I see, but I wouldn't say...
But it almost seems like he's running on another art style, though. Like with Skullgirls, it seems like he was trying to convey a certain world sense, and this seems like maybe it be in the same world, but in a totally different continent. That's the way I see it. Almost is like, let's say maybe Skullgirls took place on the Western Hemisphere, and it seems like Indivisible's all the way on the other side of the globe.
Pretty much. I mean, the worlds are not actually like literally connected. But
no, not literally, but as terms.
I know you're not implying that, but like that's definitely true. The overall aesthetic is just by virtue of being inspired by a totally separate region, that kind of permeates the entire aesthetic of Indivisible as opposed to Skullgirls. Though in Indivisible we will have stuff from more Western locales and those sorts of ethnicities. It won't 100% be Southeast Asian, but that is its core.
That'd be nice. It's nice to see. It's nice and very refreshing to see a new viewpoint to a game. I want to say a game genre, actually, because I haven't seen that many Eastern role-playing games.
Yeah, there are definitely a ton that take from either Chinese or Japanese culture, and we definitely feel that Southeast Asia is a little underrepresented, and and we're not doing it just to have our own niche,
Right.
But it's just refreshing for us to have so much to draw on that hasn't been done before, like tons of myths and just cultures that just haven't been used is really cool for us to explore. And just by virtue of being new to us, is also new to lots of other players as well.
Mm-hmm. The next question I have, what would be the biggest obstacle in getting Indivisible funded so far that you guys have run into?
Man, just getting the word out, I think. It's difficult to really, through internet, just capture somebody by the shoulders, shake them, and be like, "Hey, check out our game."
Mm-hmm.
Even when it's a free prototype, it's not being presented to channels that people are used to.
Right.
Like if we're considering this, but having the game on Steam, even if it's free, like so many people are used to launching Steam and playing their games through there, even though on PC you can just download it and run it. Like I would confess, like if I were on the other side of this, I'd be a little weirded out about like just a
random
game
download
that I can just download. Like, oh, so I download this exe. Like, do I just run it? Is this gonna blow up my computer? Like, I mean, of course not. But that would still go through my head.
Right.
But just little obstacles like that. I think keep people from trying it. The other things that we've been trying to overcome are just, I think there's a lot of sticker shock, and I think people have said this. We don't have the screw you factor,
Right.
that a lot of more successful crowdfunding games have. For Mighty Number 9, and I'm taking this. This is not my. I didn't coin that term. There's actually a really, really interesting video by somebody who goes by the Mighty Bossman, who goes over crowdfunding, and he was responding to Red Ash. I don't know how familiar you are with that crowdfunding
I'm not
effort.
actually.
Yeah, I've heard about them. Yeah,
It's crazy, but go look up the Mighty Bossman, Red Ash. It's a fantastic video where he goes over crowdfunding and just kind of the psychology of crowdfunding and how they kind of just did all the wrong things. But the screw you factor, for instance, for like Mighty Number 9 was, oh man, Inafune is saying screw you to Capcom by supporting this crowdfunding campaign. I can also say screw you, Capcom, for screwing over Mega Man.
Wow.
Bloodstained, even though it wasn't like quite as direct as Mighty Number 9, it still felt like, screw you, Konami. You're not making any more awesome Castlevanias with Iga. Like, if I contribute to this campaign, I get to say screw you to Konami. We don't really have that. There's no real screw you factor happening there that people can rally behind.
Right.
It's just and it's a brand new IP. That it's like, it's not even like, oh, this is the spiritual successor to whatever. This is, even though we're taking inspiration from Metroid and Valkyrie Profile, we're not trying to make sequels to those games. They're just a jumping off point for us. So I think people have just a little trouble connecting with the campaign, and we're also finding that people don't read as much as they see.
Mm-hmm.
That's so.
So our video, our campaign video, personally, I'm a little. I think we kind of dropped the ball a little bit on the video, because I think it, even though I feel that the gameplay stands on its own as something awesome, and all of us think the game is great, and though the prototype has its problems. It's a prototype after all. I think the gameplay stands on its own, but it doesn't. There's just not an immediately apparent human element to our campaign that people can latch onto. Even though I think the human side of Lab Zero is compelling, we didn't present that in the video as well as we could have. So, it's a combination of those things. Like things aren't immediately apparent when you go to the campaign page, like exactly what it is, exactly why you should contribute to it. It just, and it comes at a time when, there's a bunch of big games coming out. People are really starting to get burned out on crowdfunding campaigns. And we were cognizant of that going into it, and we were trying to. That's part of why we're so transparent. It's like, look, we understand all of the hurdles and all of the reservations that people have about crowdfunding. Let's try to address those and be as transparent as possible. Give them something to play, and if we address those fears and those concerns that people always have, then they can contribute to our campaign with confidence. But it's not. That wasn't as immediately apparent to them as the price tag was.
Right. I don't know. I feel like you guys aren't asking that much for a game, especially an IP which is going to have hours upon hours of content. It almost seems like if you guys were like a AAA title or something doing it, nobody would even bat an eye.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree there. Okay. I think that not everybody's familiar with Skullgirls, and it's just, I mean, we're in that weird gray area of being indie, but people not feeling like we deserve the indie cred, I guess. It's
because you guys are so open with everybody. Everyone feels like, oh well, I mean, they're just not as important as we want them to be. I feel like everyone consistently tries to bring Lab Zero. Man, what's a good way of saying this? It's almost like everyone really hesitates to give you guys the credit just because they compare you, like you said previously, to games like that are made by Capcom and to games that are made by Arcs and so on and so forth. That they're just like, well, it's just Lab Zero type of thing. I almost feel like that's also hurt Indivisible as well, by people still being like, well, they're kind of indie, but they're not really indie. They're kind of a really big deal, but not that big of a deal. They don't really need our help type of thing. Yeah, I mean, and to compound on that, I don't want to try to paint ourselves the victim here, right? But I do think that that combined with the publisher element of Indivisible and our in this respect, I think we also dropped the ball, like communicating exactly how that fits into why we're trying to crowdfund. Mm-hmm. It definitely turns people off. Like I think a lot of people, as soon as they see the word publisher, are like, oh, they're set. There's no reason to contribute to this because they're going to be fine. I almost want to say that like investor would be a better way of saying it, because investors can pull out their money at any point in time. Right. It's That's not true. Even really a publisher at this point. It's more of an investor, like a potential investor. Right. Right. That is a great idea. Man, I wish we had thought of that. No, it's just because to be perfectly honest, I was a little bit confused at first because it wasn't. I've listened to Mike explain this multiple times, and I remember when he posted the blog post, and I was still a little bit confused after it because the way he complained it, just the word publisher was giving me a preconceived notion to it. Almost. Yeah. It's. I don't want to say it's like you're biased or but you're kind of introducing something that the reader already has an idea of. Like when a game has a publisher, they have money behind them that they're not telling other people about. But you guys didn't even really have that yet. This is what this is for. This is to show. That's actually been the most confusing thing about it. Actually, exactly. That's I feel like one of the I don't want to say the only thing. One of the many things that gets lost in translation on the Crown. They still want to say, oh, we'll just wait till it's done, since they have a publisher, even though it's been noted by different sources every time. Tons of sources. People just don't read it. We could highlight it, and they still pass by it somehow. We could have started off the podcast by saying, by the way, fund Indivisible because they have no money coming from anywhere else unless we fund it, and people still would think we were lying to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they would still be like, nah, they have a publisher, they're good. It's just, it's frustrating. I understand that, Render. I do.
It's weird sometimes when, like, the way that the public treats indies is, once, like, if you have a successful game, you automatically should have money to make your next game. You shouldn't have to go to people to help with your next thing, regardless of the circumstance. And if you have some sort of publisher connection or whatever, then you don't get that same underdog status that people rally behind when you as an indie developer. So it's, and I totally agree with you guys. It's been difficult to have to, after the fact, explain, like, no, just because there's a publisher involved in this doesn't mean that we are automatically okay. And I think that's critical. And this goes back to the whole the panties thing or whatever.
Right.
I think it's critical to, when you communicate, to
maintain that transparency and speak with the fans. Exactly.
And you have to make sure that your responses and statements are very measured, because you want to, sometimes it's just lost. Like, you can't, there are going to be people out there who think that we removed every single panty shot in the game and are just, they read a tweet, a random errant tweet somewhere and think that that's what happened, and nothing is going to change their mind. There's no point in trying to chase them down to explain. There's no point in trying to chase down people who think that the game's going to get funded no matter what, whether or not we reach our goal. It's just a waste of effort, because they aren't going to engage enough to wait for you to tell them that. So you just have to
take your losses.
Cut your losses and try to for the people that are going to stick around and listen and humor you and be like, okay, well, what's the deal? For those people, you want to make sure that you're absolutely clear.
Right.
And I think Mike's Mike's, people call it a rant, but I don't think it's quite a rant.
Mike's discussion
on stream about how the funding stuff works, his breakdown of development costs, I think, struck a chord with a lot of people because it was very, very frank. But I think it's also, it's caused some friction here and there with developers and those who are trying to crowdfund and have crowdfunded in the past, on how to communicate best. And it just kind of, it hasn't been, while for the public it's been great to kind of have an eye on like a look under the hood, I suppose.
Yeah.
To better understand why we're crowdfunding the way we are. It's I don't know. It's caused a little friction here and there.
Because other developers are like, you calling me out? You calling me out?
A little bit. There has been a little bit of that.
Okay.
But in the end of the day, people just fail to understand how the game business works.
Right. No, there are people that will appreciate that. Like, fans greatly appreciate that. I almost feel like that's worth the blowback from other companies that already weren't helping you guys. I don't know. That's just my take on it. Wow. Thank you so much for some of these questions, Render. Very helpful. Yeah. Very, very helpful. For me personally as well. Bit, so. It's good. No, you're actually one of the more talkative people we have on the podcast. Like, Doug barely talked at all with any prodding. Sage was the same way, and Sonic was just really, really frank for everything. So it's nice to have someone that expands on the questions instead of just like that's almost why I feel like it's taking longer than usual, is because you're actually expanding into the questions. It's very nice.
No problem. I love to talk. I like the sound of my voice.
Okay, let's see. What parts of the Indivisible prototype did you work on, and which parts of the full game would you be focusing on after it's funded, if it's funded?
Okay. The main stuff that I was responsible for were the level design, and the enemy AI outside of battle.
Okay.
I think that there are a lot of things that I would change or I feel need work in those. Like I think the enemy, there were a bunch of things that I wanted to do with the enemy AI outside of battle. Like I wanted to have the hungry ghosts have more distinct, separate behaviors, depending on which level they were. Some of the, like I wanted to have ones that stood there and jumped up and bit you, but otherwise were stationary, like they just hung out in the same spot. I didn't get around to that. The level design, I shouldn't take full credit for it because it was somewhat of a collaborative process with me and Mike and Mariel, actually, who's also very talented besides just being an animator. A couple of things that I would change about it, were I to have the opportunity to go back, but we had time constraints and art constraints because at some point the level design has to be done so that people can slap art onto it,
right?
And like if I just keep like tweaking stuff or adding rooms or being like, well, let's rearrange this so that the player goes this way instead, like it becomes a bit of a hassle for the art team to be able to like
do their job.
Really, yeah, to do their job, to know how much work they have ahead of them to like stick textures on things and be able to do that. So I were the game to get fully funded, I would have. I guess to some extent, though less so on the Indivisible prototype than when I was working on Skullgirls. I did help out a little bit with just preparing frames for Mike to tweak in time and implement attacks, etc. I did less of that on the Indivisible prototype than I think I would probably end up doing if the full game got funded. Okay. But my primary responsibility on the full game would be helping with level design and probably enemy AI.
Enemy AI and level design. As far as enemy AI outside of the game, would that be mostly the positioning of the enemy outside of battle, like the way that they interact
where
with
they
the
spawn.
Environment? Okay, where they spawn specifically. Okay.
Yeah. And again, it's since everybody at Lab Zero wears a lot of different hats. I am often running around getting assets for this contact or this PR effort or
right.
Someone on the team is like, hey, I need this random task done, can I get some help? And usually either me or Brian Yun actually, I think is how I pronounce his last name. I always fuck that up. He and I are kind of the
do everything guys.
Yeah, I like to call ourselves the glue of the team sometimes, but that's in addition to my primary responsibilities.
Okay. Let's see.
Glue, I guess, stick together.
Sixlet, please.
Yes.
Oh my god, he said that like 3 minutes ago. Okay, so there have been a lot of cool characters shown for the game so far. Not just characters, but also monsters. Just in general, humanoid objects, I'll say, in the game. There we go.
Sure.
What made you guys decide on putting the specific incarnations that you guys did into the prototypes? Like, how did you guys choose which incarnations and which characters you guys put into the prototypes?
I think so. I didn't have much of a hand in actually selecting those particular incarnations that went into the prototype, but I know part of the reasoning behind those specifically. Zebe partially because he's a ranged character, Razmi because she's a mage, she uses magic, and Tungar because he's just very like heavy hitting, straightforward, like DPS. DPS isn't really analogous, I suppose, to Indivisible, but he's just a straightforward, like I hit you type of character. Those three, which were at the time, the three that we had like most clearly just designed like visually, they just seemed like, all right, these are going to be the characters that give the broadest sense of how the game is going to work. In addition to being like cool characters that we really liked and that we thought people would find interesting, their functional purpose was to convey in the prototype, because we figured the prototype, this is our one shot. Their purpose is to convey what the game is going to be like when the full game is made, like these different types of characters. One thing that not that you can put a fifth character on your team, but if we were to have included a fifth character, I personally, and I think we would have, would suggest a more like status effect character that didn't have like attacks but just did like cool status effect stuff.
More or less a support character.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Just to give people a sense of
the type of game you guys are going for.
Yeah. The breadth of the types of abilities that you can have.
It would be incredibly hard to defeat the final boss. I'm going to be perfectly honest, with just like 2 damage characters and a support character. So I'm really glad you guys went with what you did. I think I died like 3 times.
I am perfectly I'm intimately familiar with how difficult the boss can be, especially without being able to heal with Razmi. Like that's
Jesus, yes. I think I tried it once because Mike said it was possible, and I just cried a lot. Mike was like, "Nah, it's easy. You're doing it wrong." It was like, "Okay, Mike, cool."
Yeah. Mike is a
seasoned combo player.
Yes, he is unforgiving in many ways.
That's fair.
I'll leave it at that.
That's fair. Okay.
Let's see. What are you most excited about happening in the full game when and if you get funded? When I should say when or if you get funded.
All of the cool traversal abilities. So there are 4 different weapons planned, and there's in addition to just having bare hands.
Right.
But all of the weapons, and the cool upgrades that they can get, will just let you do different stuff. Like one of a move that I just love.
Looks so cool. That sphere looks killer.
Oh man, it's gonna be awesome. Like you'll be able to make that into a temporary platform, and maybe we can have it like spring you up higher so you could get a higher jump off of it. You can maybe like stick it into an enemy and have stick the enemy to the wall temporarily.
Like for the prototype, you guys did a really good job of conveying that each one of the weapons allows you to interact with the environment in a completely different thought of way. Like the only limit is like what you can think. And I think you guys did a great job with that and just the axe. Like, because I remember thinking, how am I going to get to the secret room? You use the axe in a way you totally didn't even think about, and suddenly you're just there.
Right.
It's beautiful.
It really is.
I think the 2 upgrade abilities that I'm most excited for, like with the bow and arrow, and Mike's talked about this publicly before too, is like hypothetically, you would, let's say you meet an incarnation that lets you that can teleport or something like that.
Hypothetically, you meet an incarnation that lets you teleport. Okay. Let's say it's not going to be in the game. Just hypothetically,
sure.
Right? Okay.
Humor me. So, like, let's say you're using the bow and arrow. You can shoot the bow and arrow, and you can teleport to where the arrow goes. Like you absorb that incarnation, and it gives you that upgrade ability. So you can like shoot an arrow way across like a huge chasm and be able to just teleport to the other side because that's where the arrow landed.
Cool.
Like
I mean, hypothetically cool. Hypothetically.
Hypothetically. We're just riffing here. I know Mike's really excited about that one. I'm really excited about that ability too. Another one that I've always loved in any sort of game that gives you just hand-to-hand combat stuff is like a Helmbreaker move. I think Helmbreaker comes that term comes from Devil May Cry. I don't know if they started it, but just being in the air and just coming down with like a
Force.
smack you on the head type of move. Just using that with the axe, and being able to, use it to chop through like things that are on the ground. It's just that's just an example of one of the simple new traversal things that we would give you.
The simple new traversal things?
Well, I mean, that one's fairly straightforward because it would just be, I mean, you can already cut through vines with the axe.
Yeah.
Presumably you'd see some some platform that's like maybe made out of wood that's kind of rickety and seems like you could chop through it.
But time out, Render, you're talking about climbing up, using the axe, falling off with the axe, and going straight through a breakable object on the ground after you've climbed up with it. And that's simple.
It seems simple to me. I don't know.
Or else she's just Craigasm. Don't worry about
no,
it.
I'm sorry. That just sounds really cool, okay? I wasn't expecting any of this.
Well, I mean, and those are the kind of just traversal abilities that we want to put in there and that we think those are the type of weapon upgrades and types of things that are that exist in Super Metroid and Metroidvania games that are what we want to bring to Indivisible, and what I think makes it so interesting for level design because I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's this thing called gated progression where
depending on the different items you have and the different things you've accomplished in the games, it allows you to go through different things, but you can only do it after you reach certain points, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That was
That's actually relatively, I want to say, familiar to people of role-playing games because it's consistently like you have to gather these 3 items and then you can go on to stage 4 or so on.
Oh, right. But I think what's really interesting with it for like a platforming game is with the level design you can kind of broadcast to the player without necessarily telling them that, oh, hey, this is the thing that I might be able to interact with later. You see it and you're like with the vines, the first time you run into the vines, I mean, you can still miss it completely, but you run up to it and maybe you punch through it a couple times and be like, I can't quite get through this, but clearly I can get past this at some point, but I just can't yet.
Right.
So, broadcasting to the player without making them feel like they're held back is what I find really interesting about level design. That's what I'm anxious with all the cool traversal abilities that we want to have to be able to work into the game.
And I think Mike was going over that on a Metroid stream I saw him. He was discussing the elements of game design inside the Metroid, which was like, this is one of the easiest parts and one of the easiest secrets. Like, they want to hide it from you so you feel like you discovered something, but you obviously are supposed to go here.
Right,
type
right.
of thing. So it's kind of like leading the player without showing them that you're 100% leading them, making them feel like they still discovered something.
Just give them hints.
Exactly. And it's really satisfying to when the game doesn't outright tell you like, oh, you can't go past here because you need this thing. When you get the thing that you need, you go, oh man, I'm so smart. Now I can use this here.
Right.
Even though the game's like the designers were like, all right, they're as soon as they get this thing, they're gonna figure out that they gotta go here.
Right.
Because boy are they clever. But like as a player, it's kind of exhilarating.
Right. No, it really is, because I've experienced that, I think, even in Skullgirls, where I'm like, oh, wait, I could do this combo. And you just, have that, couple of hours of just ecstasy where you're like, I did it!
Yeah,
and the game designer is like, okay, so after they finish this part of the combo, they'll be able to change this. It's so rudimentary for them. But you guys still factor that in. It's nice. Okay, let's see. And feel free not to answer this question, because you've given us really, really, really good hypotheticals so far. So if you want to give us another hypothetical, I appreciate it. So who's your favorite Indivisible character overall, and what would your team be in the full game? Hypothetical team.
Sure. Okay. Definitely Razmi on there. She is there is another incarnation. There's another incarnation that hasn't been revealed yet.
You don't have to say it. You just say
totally
you have them
be
on your
my
team.
team.
Okay.
She would totally be on my team. Oh man, I just gave away that it's a she.
Oh man, yes. Okay. Here's what we'll do. Here's what we'll do. When it's released, if it gets released, just say this is the person I was talking about. That's it.
No problem. I totally will.
Okay.
She's gonna be, I believe, more of a kind of a status effects like buffs, debuffs
support
type of
character.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm really excited for her because her design is super cool. Baozai, the pirate.
Oh my god, the pirate. Yes.
Just revealed.
She reminds me of Isabelle from Dragon Age too. Except
I haven't
better. Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. No worries. I'm sorry. Okay.
And I mean, I'm a sucker for Ajna because Ajna is just badass. But I would say either Dar or Naga Rider.
Really? Naga Rider?
Why?
Well, no, I just
Disappointed?
no. I'm not
Liar.
disappointed.
You're so lying.
I'm not disappointed. I
No,
genuinely didn't expect it. I didn't think you'd also join on the Naga Rider trade. Everybody's well like, yeah, Naga Rider on my team, and if I can have him as the 3 others, that'd be cool. I don't know, Render. Okay.
He's really I'm a sucker for swords, so really he comes second to Dar.
Okay.
Dar is just straightforward, like a badass.
Mm-hmm.
And he's I think it's okay to say this. He's going to be fairly prominent in the story. So I'm a big fan of Dar. So
you didn't give anything away like that. I think we all know, like, well, I don't mean like 100% know, but I think we all have an idea about who's really going to have backstories inside of the story so far. Just based off what I've been reading in the thread so far. Let's see. Oh, okay. You kind of answered this question already, but I'm just going to go ahead and ask it. You guys just announced the PS4 build on the 2nd.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You said it earlier that basically you guys were considering doing, the whole PC Steam prototype release just to get a little bit more accessibility. Is that why you guys decided to do the prototype on the PS4?
Partly. And it has definitely helped because it's a lot more accessible. Like, people are used to firing up their console and just getting a thing, and being able to put it on something that's already in people's living rooms and letting them play it on a actual console is huge and has been a real big boost to the campaign. We had always, since partway through Indivisible, the prototype's development, we'd always like hoped to get it onto PS4. And we're very lucky that all the work had been done on Second Encore because the engine had already been ported to PS4. So it was just taking that extra step that frankly mostly Mike had to take, Mike and Brady, I think. And holy crap, kudos to them for making that happen. But the reason it didn't come, it came as late in the campaign as it did is just because it we had just finished the prototype and then we launched a week or two after it finished, and then like we went straight to porting it to PS4, which takes time, and then we have to go through the submission process with Sony, which took about 2 weeks from the point in time where the PS4 version was ready, and to be able to release something on a console that isn't a patch, that's completely new and that doesn't even get Sony any money, because it's free, is unheard of to do in just 2 weeks. That's so lightning fast, to be able to do that, and I'm so glad that we were able to do it while the campaign was still going.
Right.
I
was genuinely surprised when you guys announced it. I was like, I guess this is what they've been planning the whole time. It seemed really, really smart.
Yeah, and we're so fortunate that Sony was game to do this. People ask, why not throw the prototype on Xbox One? I think because they feel left out. But that's understandable.
Microsoft's never been really good with working with you guys in the past, though. I don't want to put you in an awkward position where you have to reply, but just for anyone listening who's not as familiar with Xbox and Skullgirls, Do not get the game for Xbox. Get the game for PC. just
Wow, you're doing this on
let's
this
just be real.
podcast?
Like, and once again, Render, you don't have to comment here at all. But I'd be remiss if I honestly said that the game on Xbox and the game on PS4 or PC are the same thing.
There's definitely a little bit of baggage that comes with trying to play Skullgirls on 360, and I wish it wasn't so. And I think we in the future might be able to alleviate it in some way, but I don't know that it'll be in time for people to care.
Right? Yeah, that's 100% fair, and I don't think at this current stage of the game, the Skullgirls being like completely done, really at this point, no one's expecting it to change at all. So
yeah, well, I'm sure there are
there's always going to be that small population of
who thinks we're gonna patch it sneakily
completely and totally, despite Mike saying multiple times the game is done and we are moving forward. You guys could be like, babies could be born, people could have died, like the world could be in the midst of exploding, and people would still be like, when is Annie?
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
here we go.
Annie is
DDB doesn't even listen to our podcast.
He will now because Annie's now going to be on. Have you heard?
Annie is
Exactly.
Okay, you guys are just doing too much for him. Too much.
Yeah. But yeah, with the PS4 thing, like it the stars aligned and Sony was doing the aligning and they really helped us out, and we are eternally grateful. If we had an Xbox One development kit, we would have considered it or tried to get it on there, but we just don't. So there's not a whole lot we can do there. But yeah, we're super excited and honored to be one of the only like prototype games on PS4.
I'm getting a couple of requests from people on Twitter. One of the questions I'm being asked to ask you right now is how you got so handsome.
Of course, I should have known.
Oh, that's Cyrus Kun.
Damn, they beat me to it. I was gonna ask that.
So there are some aspects that I cannot
control.
That I cannot control.
Oh baby.
But those who are interested should look up past pictures of me, because I did not always have the aesthetic that I do now. And
I don't know, man. You with your long hair, you kind of look a little better. I saw that tweet.
Yeah, those. I also, a lot of people probably don't know, I used to have dreadlocks for a little while.
Yo,
they were.
You better put the photos on Twitter.
They were the worst dreadlocks you've ever seen in your life. They were like homemade. Like I suckered my friends into helping me make them, and they were the worst. And I was living in Japan at the time, so not only was I a tall, scary white guy with facial hair and long hair, then I was a tall, scary white guy with dreadlocks on the train that just made everybody nervous. Even though I was like all smiles and like super approachable, there's no way anybody was going to talk to me. But I maybe around the time when I was at Square Enix, I got really, really into just dressing better and just into clothes. And like I think I stumbled on there's this blog called Put This On, and it's just putthison.com, and it's all about just like trying to dress like an adult, which sounds a little
condescending.
Patronizing? Yeah, condescending.
No, I 100% know what you mean. I feel like people, specifically people in game design, have a almost, I don't want to say infantile way of dressing, but there's definitely a difference between dressing professionally and dressing comfortably. And I feel like people in the gaming community dress comfortably.
Definitely. And the thing that gets me is that the problem there is that you can still dress comfortably, but wear clothes that fit.
Yeah.
Like baggy, I mean, people are welcome to wear baggy clothes, but
oh god, they've done that on purpose.
You can wear baggy stuff that still fits you, but the problem is that most people don't know the difference between something that fits you and something that doesn't. And fit when you're trying to dress with any modicum of I want to say class, but that also sounds condescending. I mean, in integrity, I suppose.
Yeah.
Can be achieved as long as you know what you're trying to go
for, right?
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because fit is just everything. Oh my god, I want to. When I see people wearing a t-shirt that doesn't fit, I on the street, I just want to grab them by the shoulders and shake them and be like, "Oh my god, can I please tell you why this does not fit?"
Yeah, literally.
I have never done that, but
You've got like this close.
I've been so close. Oh my god! And people who know me, time they'll also see it and see me getting like anxious, and they're like, "Just Earl, just stop, just calm down,
just let it go, let it go." They don't know.
Wow,
they
that's
don't
crazy.
know.
I actually don't mind wearing khaki pants, but man, baggy pants to work.
As
All
a
right.
woman, I can also say fit is everything. Like a guy in a suit and a guy in a well-tailored suit are two completely different things.
Oh my god! Oh god! And I these days I pay a lot of attention to politics, and it just kills me when like politicians.
For example, the CNN correspondent that came on had a very ill-fitting suit, and happened to be speaking to the Republican presidential the Republican candidate for Speaker of the House. He ran for vice president.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember his
Paul Ryan.
Yeah, Paul Ryan. And Paul Ryan just I assume just every single suit he wears just fits his body.
Mm-hmm.
And so watching them stand next to each other was just really sad.
Yeah.
Because he was being interviewed, and it was just the saddest thing I've ever heard in my life, because I just felt so bad for this poor man who had to stand next to this perfect suit.
Yeah. It is crazy. Like you see it a lot. I've gone to a lot of friends' weddings, and you see just that's like the one time a year when somebody drags their one suit out of their closet to throw it on and be like, all right, well, I guess I got to suffer through a day of wearing formal wear. Like you can wear all those types of clothes that fit you and are still comfortable, but people just don't know, and it's just an extra layer of effort because they never have to wear those clothes.
Not used to how it's supposed to fit.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna move on only because I know you're very invested in fit, and honest to God, I really want to continue the conversation, but I have, I think, like 5 more questions. So the second question that I got from someone, Tuesday actually, was, where did Render come from? That's a very good name.
Oh my gosh. So
programming thing, or
no, actually, it had nothing to do with graphics or anything like that. The story behind it is, I guess it's not that bad. So before I was Render, I was, and before I even picked up the Earl friend thing, I was all sorts of names online, but the one in particular before I settled on Render was terrible. I was a big Nirvana nerd.
Oh god.
It was Teen Angst 82.
Oh god,
oh baby. Oh.
It was the worst, right? Okay. So right around that time I read the book Ender's Game. And I was if you aren't familiar with the story, you think, oh man, Ender's Game, that's kind of cool. At some point somebody ends something. That's kind of neat. So I guess that makes them an Ender. And then you read the book for 10 minutes and then you're like, oh, okay, there's just a character that's named Ender. That's neat. And I wanted to steal that name. I was like, oh man, that's such a unique name. I want to use that online. But it was so unique, and like everybody has read that book, that I figured if I just pulled it straight, like people would be like, oh, okay, he just grabbed it from there. That's kind of lame. So I was like, wait, okay, what consonant or what letter can I stick at the front of this word that will make it cool but still have that connection for me? And there are all sorts of ridiculous ones like Mender and Sender and Gender and Bender and
I was calling
like,
it.
Yeah, all sorts of stuff. Slender, Blender. I've heard everything. But I found Render and it just felt right. So I stuck it in there. and I just right around the time I had been kind of like trying to find something better than Teen Angst 82, and was like, just my friends were getting mad at me for changing my handle all the time. So I finally settled on that one because I liked it a lot, and it's just stuck.
That's fair. Okay, we're moving back on to Indivisible.
Sure.
We got this.
Okay.
And I'm asking so many Indivisible questions because I kind of felt cheated by the AMA.
Uh-huh.
And I knew if I asked a bunch of questions that I wasn't going to get answered. So I just asked one simple question, and I was like, I'll ask more in the podcast.
Okay.
Let's see. Which guest character? Oh, man, I can't say that because you already kind of answered it in spoilers. The second big reveal of the campaign was guest characters being featured in the game as incarnations and so on and so forth, which you guys decided to originally reveal at 100,000 and then decided to move over to 50,000. But how did the idea of having guest characters appear in the game come about? Like, where exactly did you guys think, okay, the main character is going to have all these different incarnations? And no, I'm sorry, guest characters, not incarnations. There we go.
Yeah. I can't speak to the timing of when that happened, but it was kind of a natural just step in our train of thought, to because we all love those games that we're featuring guest characters of, and we certainly feel a connection to those other developers since they're kind of in that indie realm. And several people on the team know people that work there, and we figured Indivisible, the way that it works with like incarnations, is just ideally set up to very easily work guest characters in. In a separate game, like a Final Fantasy or something, it's really difficult to work that in unless there's some like angle. Like Kingdom Hearts, the whole thing was, let's stick a bunch of guest characters in there. That's the appeal. But for something like, I don't know, Devil May Cry, it's really difficult to work in some random character from an indie title or something. But for Indivisible, since all of the incarnations, the actual frame count, when compared to like a fighting game character or Skullgirls character specifically, is really low, really, really, really low. Like you get like,
I guess you don't need as much polish because it's not as frame specific as a fighting game, right?
Right. Well, they just the sheer amount of animations that they need to have in Indivisible is just situational animations is just far less.
Okay.
Like in Indivisible, Ajna has a whole lot because she runs around in the world and she has all those actions that she doesn't also have in battle. But for like Zebe and Razmi and Tungar, they have maybe like 100, 120 roughly, maybe probably less. I don't remember the exact number, and if those numbers I just said are projected for the final version or if they're for the prototype, but they're just significantly it's just a significantly lower number of frames. So we figured that was ideal to be able to bring in a guest character without and give them an exciting opportunity to be on a team without having to commit to making like a Skullgirls character level of feature. Putting any of those characters as a Skullgirls character is just worlds apart from being able to put them in as a guest character in Indivisible. So the combination of those things just made it a kind of natural fit, and fortunately those developers were very, very generous in allowing us the opportunity to put them in there.
Right. Okay, that's fair. I haven't seen anything on this, and this may be something you can't say, but have you guys decided on how the guest characters are going to be used in the games? Or I know a couple of them may be like in an incarnation's lifestyle, you guys were talking about how Annie could be like, you know, a whole galaxy far, far away comes to intervene or something like that. So it still works. But have you guys decided if the guest characters will all be playable characters? Will they all be playable, right?
All of them will be playable, yes.
Okay.
You will be able to have any of them on your team, multiple at a time if you have more than one of them. We're anticipating that they're going to be more like end game content, like just kind of side quests where you can go and grab them, because we don't want them to be on what's called the critical path.
Okay.
Where you're required to go get them to finish the game, because you know we don't want them to dilute from the indivisible experience, but we want them to contribute to it. Okay. So you'll be able to play through the entire game without ever getting them if you don't want to. But at the same time, we'll be making it easy so that you can, let's say, I don't know how familiar you are with the proposed inner realm that you can go to. It's basically like your home base.
Oh, right, where you can talk to all their incarnations and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah. So, you know, again, this is hypothetical, and this is like a real
100% hypothetical. Yes.
So basically, you're making them optional, but still valuable. It's probably
right.
Yeah. And it's like an interesting thing. I mean, what is it? Final Fantasy Tactics lets you get Cloud and
as side quest.
Okay, yeah,
as a side quest, but it's not a story critical thing,
right?
So it'll be like roughly that level.
Okay.
I know.
That's still just as rewarding and without taking away from the indivisible experience. So that's a really, really smart idea. It sounds like. Jeez. Now I just really want to play this. Please fund this game. Oh my god, fund this game so Sharpie can play it. Thank you, everybody. Okay. I have 3 more questions, and then I'll give you a chance to, you know, just wrap up or say anything that you wanted to say. So everyone, and I mean everyone, but specifically me, wants this game funded. But as always with all crowdfunders, there's a possibility that it will not be. Mm-hmm. So if not, where would you be headed next, and where would you try and go after Lab Zero? I know that somebody was talking about in the AMA, if we get up to a certain amount or something, they may consider extending the campaign. But there is sort of a drought near the holiday seasons with all these other games being announced, and interest is just going to wane. Mm-hmm. So I know that that's a possibility, but it's not something everyone's trying to bank on. Where would you be moving on to personally? And if Lab Zero disbands, what would you personally be moving on to?
That's tough to say.
Mm-hmm.
If Lab Zero disbanded, I would. My automatic fallback, just in times of dire need, if I really need a job just to hold me down for the interim, I can always do freelance translation, just like localization projects. I've had actually during the development of Skullgirls on the side, I did a little bit of localization, and I have, as recently as a few weeks ago, had somebody approach me being like, "Hey, dude, I know you're busy, but can you do some loc?" I turned that down just because.
Some loc, bruh! Oh, man. No, this is an important question. So, Sixlight, do not edit these 2 questions out. These are very important now.
No, it's fine. It's just that part.
Render, these are really important questions the community wants to answer. Once again, they're kind of personal, sensitive questions. So if you don't want to answer them,
sure,
just tell me. Do you have a waifu?
Yes, and I'm making sure that it's distinct from an actual wife, which I don't. I do have a girlfriend, but given that a waifu is completely different.
Yeah. 100%. No, they're not the same thing at all.
No, not at all. My waifu is this. Does she have to be 2D?
She does not have to be 2D.
Okay, then Sheena Ringo.
Wow.
She's this. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's this jazz musician from Japan. She's like, I wouldn't say she's exclusively jazz, but
singer-songwriter-esque?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
She was the lead singer for for a band called Tokyo Jihen,
Mm-hmm.
or the Tokyo Incidents.
Okay, I think I heard. Yeah, I think I heard.
She's amazing. And she's my favorite ever, forever.
Do you have a? Oh Jesus!
Do I have it?
Do you have a favorite song?
Oh, okay. I thought.
No, I wasn't gonna ask anything terrible. I was just gonna ask favorite song.
Favorite song is called Sonan. Or oh god.
A Google search with her compares her to I Know from Guilty Gear.
Yes, actually, it is. I don't know that Daisuke Ishiwatari has ever
Cosplay?
acknowledged it, but
No.
it has long been rumored that she was the inspiration for that character.
Wow.
Yes, she is awesome.
Okay, moving on
Sure.
to the
Let's
secondary, very important question. Now, this question was actually written by Zidian because I asked him to write the questions for me because I was running out of a little bit of time. I already know the answer to this question, but have you noticed me, Senpai?
Zidirio.
Okay. And I already know I was noticed because when you guys were doing the charity thing, you guys got interviewed. You were like, "Oh, the Purple Sharpie, I love your stream," and I like freaked out the entire time. It was great. Okay, yeah. So that's those are all my questions. Sixlet, do you have anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay, Render, do you want to say anything to the community about you or Lab Zero or specifically Indivisible before we head out?
Please, we in any way possible that you're able to support us either for Skullgirls or for Indivisible or Lab Zero. Thank you. We literally would not be here if it were not for people and their faith in us and their generosity. Like I would not have had the opportunities that I've had if it weren't for people funding Skullgirls. And I hope that my efforts to communicate with the community and run the Skullgirls tournament at Evo and work on these games for you guys. I hope that it is worth it for everybody.
Render, once again. I'm sorry.
Worth it for me.
Once again, Render, I'd like to thank you personally for agreeing to come on the podcast and spending, almost 2 hours with us. Really, really appreciate it. Like you said before, please, 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 please go fund Indivisible. They would greatly appreciate it. Lab Zero has been working very, very hard to get this game out there, and I see that we have reached 700,000 and 719,000 now. I think we made actually about a little bit over 5,000 today so far, and it's not even 5:00 yet. So we have a little bit more than a week, like one more day than a week, 8 days left in this campaign to raise a couple 100,000 more. See if we can do it. Even every donation helps. Everything helps. If you can't donate, just share. Tell your friends. Everyone would appreciate it. I'd appreciate it. Render appreciate it, and Lab Zero would greatly appreciate it.
Spread the word, please.
So once again, thank you, Render.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Sharpie.
Sixlet.
Oh, Render, I cut you off. I'm so sorry. Thank you,
Render. No, I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a ton of fun.
No problem. I'm the Purple Sharpie.
And Sixlet.
And this has been the Skullgirls Podcast. Yay! Okay, and we're done. Yay!
Yay! Sure.
Unless Sixlet wants to intervene with one question that he has right now.
I actually have a question for you, Sharpie. Why don't you keep going? Hi-oh! Anyway.
That was a dodge.
I feel baited. Okay, so does everyone in California talk like that? Is it just like that normal, just like, yeah, man, like I just want to get 50 pounds of coke or whatever, just I don't know, is there that formal? Like you get pulled over, it's like, yeah, brah, you know why I pulled you over, man? Because you're doing 70, and brah, you know it's 25.
Okay, Sharpie, don't make it hard for me to edit this out, please.
Please don't edit this out. This is good.
Oh,
People want to hear this. Okay,
well, fine,
edit it out.
I'll
You can
keep
put it.
that
You can
one.
put it in the bloopers, just like
Hey,
you
there
did
you
with
go.
Fox.
Fine, yeah.
Okay. Fine.
Seriously,
So-
Sharpie, the last 2 questions? Are you serious?
They were questions that people had asked.
And
in
you
the
wanted this to
AMA.
be professional?
I
Oh,
thought.
come on. No, they were fine. They were fine.
Mister. I didn't ask any questions all podcast.
No, it's fine, Render. I like to pressure her in the end. Just to
Yeah,
make her
no,
feel
it's
guilty.
Oh, I
okay.
see, I see,
It's
I see.
okay.
part of the
We
gift.
kind of have a Mike and Render relationship. Thank you so much, Render. I really do appreciate
thank you
it.
again,
I've been
Render.
trying to make this happen forever, but